The park was nearly empty that night. The streetlights flickered above, casting long, stretched shadows across the benches. A young man named Ethan sat slouched forward, elbows resting on his knees, staring at the ground. His face wore the exhaustion of someone fighting battles no one could see, battles that had been quietly breaking him for far too long. Just a month earlier, Ethan had been full of dreams. He'd moved to the city with high hopes to build a career, make his parents proud, and finally prove to himself that he could succeed. But life had other plans. The job he'd worked so hard to land disappeared when the company downsized. Bills began to stack up, and the calls from home, once comforting, became harder to answer. Because how do you admit that you're falling apart? Now he sat alone in the park, numb. The same thought kept circling in his mind, haunting him all week. Maybe I'm not meant for anything. Maybe I'll never get it right. His chest tightened. He felt invisible in a world that was too busy to notice. And in that moment of quiet despair, he whispered into the cold night air, "What's the point of trying anymore?" As his thoughts spiraled, he suddenly heard footsteps approaching slowly. Looking up, he saw an old homeless man walking toward him. The man had a gray beard, a weathered face, and wore clothes that had clearly seen better days. Ethan braced himself, expecting the man to ask for money. But instead, the man paused, studied him quietly, and said in a gentle, raspy voice, "You look more lost than me, son. Are you okay?" Ethan blinked in surprise. This man, who had so little, was asking him if he was okay? He let out a dry, bitter laugh. "You're the one living on the street. Why are you worried about me?" The old man gave a small shrug and a faint smile. "Because sometimes the ones who seem to have the least are the ones who notice the most. I know that look. I've worn it myself." Ethan didn't know how to respond. He felt both exposed and strangely comforted. The man slowly lowered himself onto the bench beside Ethan. For a few quiet moments, they sat in silence, two strangers connected by something deeper than words. Then, the old man reached into his worn backpack and pulled out a small, half loaf of bread wrapped in a napkin. His hands trembled slightly as he unwrapped it, broke it in half, and held one piece out toward Ethan. "Here," he said.
"Eat."
Ethan frowned and shook his head. "I can't take that. You need it more than I do." But the man pushed it closer, with quiet firmness. "Listen, son. Sometimes sharing what little we have makes us feel rich. And tonight, I'd rather not eat alone." Ethan hesitated. His throat tightened. No one had offered him anything in weeks. Not food. Not comfort. Not even a kind word. And now, here was a man with almost nothing, offering him half his only meal. Finally, Ethan accepted the bread. As he took a bite, an unexpected warmth spread through his chest. It wasn't just the food, it was the gesture, the compassion. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel invisible. After a few minutes of quiet chewing, Ethan turned to the man. "Why are you being so kind to me? You don't even know me." The old man smiled faintly and looked up at the night sky. "Life's knocked me down more times than I can count. I lost my job, lost my family, lost my home. For a long time, I believed I had nothing left to give. But then I realized, if I still have the strength to help someone else up, then I'm not truly broken." He paused. His voice cracked slightly. "The world tells us our worth is in money, in titles, in success. But son, your worth is in the love you give. That's the one thing no one can take away from you." Ethan felt tears prick the corners of his eyes. Those words pierced through the darkness that had wrapped around his heart. He thought about how often he had measured himself by failure, losing a job, letting his parents down, not being where he thought he should be. But here was a man with nothing, still radiating strength through kindness. And in that moment, Ethan realized maybe he'd been seeing life all wrong. Failure didn't define him. His choices did. And he still had a choice. Before he could say more, the old man stood up. He gently patted Ethan's shoulder and said, "You're gonna be all right, son. Just don't forget. You still matter, even on the days you feel like you don't." And with that, the man walked away, vanishing into the shadows of the quiet park. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a different kind of energy. He couldn't stop thinking about the man's words, or the way he had offered half his only meal without hesitation. Inspired, Ethan walked to a nearby diner and bought a warm breakfast. Eggs, toast, and hot coffee. He carried the bag back to the park, hoping to find the man again. But the old man wasn't there. Instead, Ethan saw another homeless man sitting under a tree, shivering in the cool morning air. Ethan paused, then walked over and handed him the bag. "Here," he said with a smile.
"Eat."
The man's eyes widened in surprise and gratitude. Ethan felt something rise in his chest, something he hadn't felt in weeks. Purpose. As he turned and walked away, he whispered to himself, "Maybe I can't change the whole world, but I can change someone's world today." From that day on, Ethan made a promise, not just to rebuild his own life, but to live with compassion, no matter how small the act. Because he had learned something powerful. Even in the darkest moments, the smallest act of kindness can light the way, not just for someone else, but for you too. Life will always bring moments that test us, times when we feel invisible, defeated, or unsure of our worth. But Ethan's story reminds us of something timeless. Even in our lowest hours, kindness has the power to heal. A single act of compassion from a stranger can reignite hope. And one small choice to give can change not just another person's day, but the direction of your own life. So when you feel like giving up, remember this. You don't have to change the whole world. Just change one moment, one heart, one life. Because often, in lifting others, we find ourselves lifted too. And the true measure of our worth isn't in what we've lost, but in the love we choose to give.